If you all want to take your seats, we're going to get started in just a moment.
I'll take this one away from the stands. Al, is there anybody outside coming in? No?
I went downstairs.
Thanks. Suddenly it's quiet. Okay. Good evening, everyone, and welcome. My name is Marion Moore, and I'm a member of the South Shore Council of Canadians, and we're happy to be working together with the East Dalhousie Action Group. I never know what you're called, so that's what I called you tonight. So we are gathered tonight in Mi'kma'ki, the unceded and ancestral territory of the Mi'kmaq people. We recognize that we have a responsibility to uphold the peace and friendship treaties which lay out the responsibilities of both sovereign nations. And recently we've all been learning more about the significance of these treaties, as we know that our government is failing to live up to the terms. They did not consult with Mi'kmaq people before lifting the uranium ban. They have passed a bill which could result in a $50,000 fine and jail time for blocking forest access roads on what they call Crown land, and we know that the people in Hunter's Mountain are blocking the land to stop the clear cutting, and generally not recognizing the treaties. We had asked Michelle Paul, who is a friend, a treaty rights holder, a water protector, a land defender, an advocate, and an activist, and whom many of you heard if you were at the Shoulder to Shoulder rally in Halifax a couple of weeks ago. However, she's unable to be here tonight because of a family emergency. So we won't have her eloquent words tonight, but I encourage you to consider what all of this means for us and for the land as we explore this issue tonight. We are all treaty people. So we, the Council of Canadians, have been working on this issue since our very first meeting in East Dalhousie back in May. That was the first sort of public gathering. It was an extraordinary evening. Most people couldn't even get in the building. People who arrived like 15 minutes before the meeting couldn't get in. There was no room. So many people were interested. And that meeting happened very shortly after Premier Houston lifted what was called the permanent ban on uranium mining. But as a group, we were active back in 2008 and 2009, and we were part of the provincial organizing team that worked to put the permanent, what we thought was going to be a permanent ban, and that was put in place in 2009. So I can see people here in the audience, and one of them is going to be speaking tonight, people who have been through this before, and it's very different this time, and we're going to hear more from people tonight. A few housekeeping details. We have info tables from several groups. The East Dalhousie group there, Council of Canadians here, and our Friends of Nature over here. And just a word about Friends of Nature. They have planned a meeting for tomorrow night at Forest Heights at 7? 6:30. 6:30. And it's in conjunction with the Forest Heights School Student Environmental Group. And interestingly enough, we held many meetings in that building back in 2008. So it feels like we're coming full circle. So take time to look at the information tables. There's lots. We're going to talk about action at the end of the meeting, but we all have offer opportunities to take action. Tonight's event is free, but we welcome donations to cover costs. There are cookies back at the table there. I think that there's some left. If you want more information from any of the organizations here, be sure to leave your contact information. We have a sign-up sheet. I expect the others do too. So tonight's meeting will feature a slideshow, then a panel of amazing speakers, an opportunity for questions with the panelists, and perhaps most importantly, a chance to discuss the ways that we can take action as individuals and as a community. So I'm now going to introduce Andrew Jameson, not Andrew Jackson, Andrew Jameson, a member of the East Isle Housing Group. And he's going to moderate the discussion and introduce the speakers.
All right. Thank you. Thank you all for coming. I'm AJ, and I live just down the other side of the Cornwall Road in the 6 Fall down in New Germany. I moved back to Nova Scotia a few years ago. I bought a house on a well. I got married and I had a kid. My son Cannon is 3. He was born with Down syndrome. Kids like Cannon are 45 times more likely to develop leukemia in their lifetime, and that's without elevated levels of uranium in their drinking water. Leukemia is one of the cancers that's commonly associated with uranium activity. So that's why I'm here, because I'm a dad and I want to mitigate risk for my family. That's the only reason I'm here. But there are a bunch of other passionate people behind me, and I'll introduce them throughout the evening. And to start off, we're going to have a presentation from Megan. Megan lives just steps away from the proposed site in East Dalhousie and was on hand in Province House just recently and handed over 7,000 signed petitions to Premier Houston.
Thank you, AJ. Thank you all for coming. It's very nice to see so many familiar and new faces. We welcome you all. And I'm just going to give a little slideshow presentation here on how we got started, where we are, and what we're doing. It's a little bit surreal being here. I used to go to school here in elementary and junior high, so this used to be a classroom of mine. And now I'm speaking out all in front of you, so here we are. All right, I'm going to get started. The history of uranium exploration in Nova Scotia. Not many people know that it was explored by mining companies in the 1970s and early 80s, where they took core samples from 6 different areas in the province. Moosehide Lake in Digby County, Greywood Dump in Annapolis County, East Dalhousie Cherry Field in Kingston, Annapolis County, Millbrook in Hants County, and Louisville in Pictou County. And a little less unknown fact was Harriet's Field in Halifax County, which still has uranium in their water to this day that they cannot drink. In 1981, there was a moratorium put in place, followed by a legislative ban in 2009 due to environmental concerns such as groundwater contamination and radioactive waste. In March of this year, our provincial government lifted that ban. And the call from many experts for protecting our waters, lands, air, and our health was ignored. So why are we talking about uranium in 2025? There was a request for proposal put out from our provincial government in May of this year, listing 3 sites open for uranium exploration: Louisville and Pictou County, Millbrook and Hants County, and within the Lahey River watershed, East Dalhousie, Annapolis County, my hometown. The RFP closed in June of this year with no response other than from the mining company saying the red tape needs to be cut. So what has happened since the RFP was closed? In June, Nova Scotia releases a new approach to metal mining, making it faster in Nova Scotia. The new process cuts red tape. Oh look, that's just what the mining company was asking for. Then councils started listening to their constituents and started to send letters of request for pause letters after no public consultation to our First Nation communities or settlers. Then our councilors received letters of reprimand from our provincial government, threatening them. There were residents that received calls to allow exploration on their private property, and then the government denied that. Our federal government passed a very interesting bill, Bill C-5, without any amendments. The Building Canada's Act, that's very important to look up. More recently, in October of this year, as AJ stated, we had our paper petition presented by a legislature, Lisa LaChance of the NDP and Derek Mombercat of the Liberal Party, with over 7,000 signatures, to say Nova Scotians do not want this. The same day we were in legislature, they passed two ominous bills. The first one was Bill 137, the Fast Track Permitting Process for Mining Companies, the Making Business Easier Act. The second one was Bill 127, to fine protesters and land protectors, but they called it the Protecting Nova Scotians Act. In October 14th, they released a new mining portal that helps fast-track mining permits in Nova Scotia. On October 21st, Tim Houston played musical chairs with his cabinet, and he made himself the Minister of Energy. On October 23rd, he signs an agreement to collaborate on the development of small modular reactors in partnership with Ontario. And then on November 15th, we all came together at what I can only say was the most amazing experience that I have seen of people and land protectors from all over the province, shoulder to shoulder. I witnessed so many beautiful things and learned so much that day. And I really appreciate our Indigenous friends inviting us to that day. It was wonderful. So one of the reasons why we're here tonight is our water. And the LaHave River watershed is one of the largest watersheds in southwestern Nova Scotia. It covers 1,700 square kilometers and is found within Annapolis, Kings, and Lunenburg counties. Many of us live within this watershed. So what are the environmental impacts of disrupting uranium? Uranium exploration and mining releases radon and radioactive toxic particles that can contaminate the water, soil, crops, and wildlife. These contaminants can enter the food chain and contaminate our drinking water. Nova Scotia is the second most densely populated province in Canada. No matter where you live in the province, your health could be at risk. And this is from the Canadian Association of Physicians for the Environment. Uranium is highly soluble in water, making exploration and mining in areas with heavy rainfall like Nova Scotia especially hazardous. Remember the flash floods that we experienced in 2023 and 2024? Can you imagine if you added uranium to that mix? Let's not find out. Then there are the health impacts of disrupting uranium. Through exploration or mining, public exposure to radon gas and radioactive materials through groundwater, air crops, and the food chains. Radon is colorless, odorless, and highly carcinogenic, and it ranks the second leading cause of lung cancer. The potential health impacts, as published by CAPE, the Canadian Association of Physicians for the Environment: kidney failure, DNA damage, infertility, damage to the brain, lungs, kidney, liver, bones, cancers, leukemia. Our government likes to compare Saskatchewan, saying they can mine uranium out there safely. Why can't we do it in Nova Scotia? Let's just compare Saskatchewan to Nova Scotia here a little bit. The land area, the population, we're about the same, except they're 12 times larger than we are. Their population density is 1.8 kilometers. We have 18 per square kilometers. So there's a big difference between Saskatchewan and here. I'm not going to go into much details, but I'll just leave you with this quote from the Saskatchewan's Environmental Society, where they say the environmental costs associated with the mining of uranium are not acceptable. I don't think there's anything else that needs to be said there. I do just want to let you guys know to know your rights when it comes down to your land and property. You should always look into the Mineral Resources Act and the Expropriation Act. You do not own anything that is beneath your property. And if there is something they want, they will find a way to get it. So please read up on these 2 bills that are out there. So you might be thinking, this is a lot of information. What can you do? You can contact your councilors, your MLA, your MP. You can raise awareness, share information, talk to your neighbors, participate in community action like you are here tonight. Thank you all for coming. And understand the current state situation. Stay informed. Check out the local news articles that are put out there. Find out the real information and consult with environmental scientists and other experts to gain a deeper understanding of the issues. So as a whole, there were no consultations. Expert opinions were unheard and Nova Scotians were left in the dark. So now counties and communities are standing up, being threatened with funding, and we're getting blanket responses from our elected officials. We do deserve better. So I'm going to leave you with this. Let's stand up and let our voices be heard. We say no to exploration and mining of uranium. Bring back the moratorium, reinstate the ban. If you guys want some more information, please visit our website at NoUraniumNS. And you can follow along at Citizens Against Uranium Exploration and Mining in Nova Scotia on Facebook. Thank you all.
So I told you before that the only reason I'm here is to mitigate risk for my family. That's not entirely true. As treaty people, we all have responsibilities to those treaties, and water defense is paramount among those responsibilities. Who here had a dry well this summer? Okay, so you've experienced what it's like when you're unable to use your well, carting water back and forth, buying it. So we know what, we got a small taste of what the people in Harrietsfield have dealt with, you know, since uranium occurred in their wells. While we're talking about water, Virginia is a state that's not entirely unlike us. Virginia has a very rich mining history, right? Coal mining Virginia, you've all heard the country songs. We've all heard the Anne Murray songs. So we know the comparisons between our 2 places that we live. Virginia, since 1982, has had a standing ban on uranium mining. That's mining-rich Virginia refuses to mine uranium in their state. The reason they cite is precipitation. They're under the belief that it rains too much in Virginia to safely mine uranium. I don't know if anyone looked at where we sit on the map and how much precipitation we receive. Now, this summer notwithstanding, it rains a lot here. If it rains too much for Virginia to mine uranium safely, I don't see how we're any different. Just give me 1 second here. So the next speaker is a community leader that doesn't need an introduction. Many of you, I'm sure, know her from either the community or her work as council for District 8. I'm going to have Casey DeLong stand up and say a couple of quick words for us.
Hello, everybody. Good evening. Sorry, give me a moment. Yeah, I'm Casey DeLong. I represent District 8 of MODL, so that's all the communities that surround the town here, from the Chester border and Martins River, along through to Blockhouse, and then down to the town border of Town of Wilbur. So I know a lot of you. Hello. And I will also mention that I'm honored to be here on treaty territory. I was sitting on council in 2023, the year of the floods and the fires. We declared 2 states of emergency that summer, one specific to District 8. Megan's point is well taken. I don't think we should be adding uranium to this already volatile set of circumstances that we face in a climate-changed world. I'm very proud of the work of my colleague, Alison Smith. She'll be talking to you about MODL, Municipality District of Lunenburg's response to this uranium issue. I'm actually not part of that official response. I'm on medical leave currently. I was diagnosed with cancer last March. I had my last chemo on Monday though, so that's a... Okay guys, don't make me cry. I still have other treatments that I need to do, multiple surgeries, immunotherapy ongoing, and radiation, so it's been a weird year. So I'm mostly up here to say I have cancer and I don't think uranium is a good idea.
You're here.
That's it. And I also take issue with the way that uranium has been strong-armed into a battle that we need to fight now. This was very unilateral. This was not a mandate that the provincial government had from the previous election. I'm absolutely furious. We had a strong moratorium in place on what was a settled issue. I'm just going to read a couple words from the Nova Scotia Mining Association's website before I leave you. And they say, the government of Nova Scotia repealed its ban on uranium exploration and mining in 2025. That sent a signal to the global mining industry that Nova Scotia is open for business, that we want the jobs, investment, and economic opportunity that mining and quarrying create. It told the world the government of Nova Scotia is committed to making policy and permitting decisions based on science and facts, not misconceptions and politics. I feel like I could say the same thing. You know? Let's make our decisions based on science and facts and not misconceptions and politics. But they go on to say a lot of things that I don't agree with. And when they, explain what uranium is, what it's for, why it's a critical mineral, and that we need to triple nuclear power generation, I don't think we're going to do that with Nova Scotian uranium. I'm told that's not good enough quality for much of anything, but anyhow. I stopped reading when they started talking about how great it was for cancer patients with the isotopes that they were going to make. So I think I'm going to leave it there. Just absolutely furious. Thank you, everybody.
Speaking quickly to the quantity and quality of the uranium in our deposits here, it's been explored before, twice. So this is a wholly uncreative endeavor by the provincial government. Our uranium has already been deemed to be of substandard quantity and substandard quality to make it worth going after. The companies most recently are saying that the RFPs were too restrictive and that we need to cut the red tape. A few of us are of the opinion that possibly the RFPs were intentionally restrictive, so they could cut the red tape, lift the ban on uranium, so that they could go after potentially other minerals. If you were to explore for other minerals in Nova Scotia under the ban, and you hit uranium, you had to cease operations. We think they may have just opened up the ground by removing the ban. We were supposed to have a member from the Environmental Action Centre here tonight, Karen McKendry. Unfortunately, she couldn't make it. The Lunenburg fog is keeping her at bay this evening. I lived for 9 months in Outport, Newfoundland, and I thought I'd seen fog. And then I moved to Lunenburg County, and I was corrected. So next up, we have another well-known LaHave River local, Middle LaHave, if my research is correct, who needs no intro, but is getting one anyways. A leader in the fight against the nuclear industry since the 1960s. His activism earned him a dossier at CSIS.
Canadian Security Intelligence Service, if you were.
A testament that government action is not always common sense nor proportionate. As a doctor and academic, he stood before the Voluntary Planning Committee looking at uranium mining in Nova Scotia the first time, which ultimately led to the permanent ban on uranium mining in Nova Scotia. While the ban may not have been permanent, the effects of uranium mining in Nova Scotia certainly will be. Here to speak to those effects is Dr. David Maxwell.
That way I can see what I'm on the screen.
Works for us.
The, whoops, disappeared. The side disappeared. It's all right. That was at one point something that looked vaguely like a DNA molecule. That's what the intention was. So I'm going to talk about why uranium's bad for your health. I'm not sure exactly whether that's what I'm supposed to be talking about, but that's what it is. This is a cold slope version. I'm cutting out an awful lot of the science and things, and I'm doing this basically to equip you with the background knowledge, because my sense is that I'm talking to the converter. So I don't need to convince you, but I'll give you ammunition. Basic principles. Uranium is bound in the rock, and as it stays in the rock, the radon, for example, stays in the rock. All the other breakdown products, all the daughters, as they decay, they remain in the rock. When you dig up the rock, or extract the rock, or whatever, all those poisonous radioactive materials get released. If you are actually going after uranium, if you want uranium to build a bomb or to make a reactive pile or whatever, what you actually want is a uranium-235. But only 0.5% of all the uranium in the rock is actually 235. The rest of it is almost entirely U-238, and this is what causes the problems from the perspective of health. Sorry. All right, this is what happens with the 238. This is a very simplified version of the decay sequence of uranium-238, and there are particular things that are noted in here. First, you've got uranium, which is toxic, as has been observed. That goes down to radon. Radon, after 3.8 days, decays into something else, and it doesn't matter what it decays into. That, in turn, decays into something else, decays into something else, into something else again. With each decay, it emits bursts of radiation. And we'll get to why this is important. Eventually, you get down to polonium-210, which is particularly unpleasant stuff. And we'll get to that as well. Well, thank you. So, how much does radon increase in the vicinity of a uranium mine? Simplistically, and this is simplistic, I'm sort of boiling this down to the very simple processes. It's about it's roughly double the background radiation, and it equates to about 2.5 millisieverts. The Bismarck Mine Company in East Germany, before the fall of the Berlin Wall, kept extraordinarily accurate and meticulously maintained records of radon levels in the environment at considerable distances, up to 400 kilometers from the mine. And so all of this material suddenly became available when the Berlin Wall fell, and was picked up by two German researchers called Kupfers and Schmidt, who were working for the OK Institute. Thank you. So, we have remarkably detailed information on exactly what happens if you have a uranium mine, what it does to the environment, from the Bismarck Mine Company. They had a number of open pit mines in an area in East Germany. They crushed the rock on site, and they concentrated the uranium-235 on site, and that released the radon. They built heaps of the tailings because everything else, all they want is the 235. Everything else just is waste as far as they're concerned. So they built it up in big piles, which continue to emit radon indefinitely. It's going to continue forever. Well, forever as far as we're concerned. And they had problem with the radioactive dust blowing around and contaminating things, so they covered up the piles and suppressed them with water, and that then resulted in radioactive material filled pits, which seeped into the water table. Coopers and Schmidt in particular looked at the radon, and what they found was really quite fascinating. They analyzed what the predicted rate of lung cancer would be given the amount of radon as measured by the Bismuth Mine Company. In simple terms, they found that the rate of lung cancer would increase anywhere from 2 to 4 times from baseline. And of more significance is that half of it occurred within 100 kilometers of the source, but the rest of it, the other half, occurred up to 400 kilometers away from the mine.
That's New Brunswick.
So, I mean, and they don't talk about that. That's not something that is commonly brought up when you're talking about the dangers of radon. So, what is the problem with radon? Why is radon so problematic? It's a freely mobile gas, which is basically impossible to confine. As long as it's locked in the rock, it stays there and it decays. But after 3.8 days of its generation, it decays to polonium-218, which is a solid. So we've gone from a gas to a solid material, and everything beyond that is solid. So now we've had a gas that has distributed itself widely and is turned into solids that precipitate out and deposit. If you breathe in the radon and it turns into polonium-218, you've now got solid 218 in your lungs, irradiating your lungs from the inside. And the same thing happens in the environment. It's precipitated out on the vegetation, and so anything that eats the vegetation, all the wildlife and everything else, they get irradiated as well, because now they've eaten this, they've got this polonium-218 in their gut, and it's deteriorating, decaying into the other things which are firing off bursts of radiation. And I don't know exactly what radiation is. You may know. So now you have a nuclear pile irradiating yourself from the inside if you're a caribou, in fact happens, and it becomes so bad. If we can go on to the next thing. This actually was studied in northern Saskatchewan, where, who was it? Thomas and Gates in 1999 studied how much radiation there was in the livers of caribou in the area, and they determined that, well, there was a lot of radiation in the livers, and that the Aboriginals should not eat more than 1 caribou liver a year in order to try to limit their exposure to radiation. But more than 1 caribou liver a year would expose them to excessive amounts. Obviously, they're going to be exposed. If you eat radioactive liver, you're going to get radioactivity in you. And so that also applies to the caribou, and I don't know how the caribou feel about being radioactive. So back to humans now, and the radon. This is all in radon. They calculated that the extra radon released by the mining in Uranium could be expected to result in an additional 6 lung cancer cases per 1,000 population. And if you translate that, and I mean, if somebody wants to challenge me on it, I've done the arithmetic, so I'm responsible for it. Translating that into Nova Scotian population, a uranium mine in Lunenburg County could be expected to generate an additional 3,000 cases of lung cancer over the next 70 years. And that's the clue here, that this happens over a long period of time, much longer than the politicians. And they take no responsibility. So, but it's not an insignificant amount. I also calculated how much this was going to cost and how much they were going to have to pay to treat the lung cancers. In some senses, it's a good thing to be treating lung cancer because lung cancer patients don't live long. So they don't cost a lot before they die. So you're better off, if you're going to get something from the politician's perspective, you're better off getting something that doesn't cost you an awful lot. So, what else? So that's the radon. That's why radon is bad for you and why it's impossible to confine and why it hurts you. What else matters? In fact, there are only 4 other compounds or substances in this whole affair that are actually toxic. Radon itself is not toxic, but uranium is toxic, and that's been mentioned. It causes renal damage. It acts as an estrogen analog, so it screws up your reproductive processes. And as a radioactive material, it causes gastric, kidney cancers, and leukemias. The next one is radium. Radium used to be used by the industry who made fluorescent watch faces, and the people who painted those watch faces got jawbone disintegration, and eventually, when that became apparent, then they said, "Okay, well, we won't paint the watch faces anymore." But in the meantime, Madame Curie, who discovered the whole thing, had died from exposure to the radium. So there. Lead-210, lead in general goes to the bone and behaves the same as calcium. So lead-210, which is in the sequence of this decay, it goes to your bone where it emits beta radiation inside the bone for the next 22 years. And as you can imagine, you're irradiating yourself from inside. And then, before decaying to, you guessed it, polonium-210. Polonium-210 is well absorbed from food and water. It's produced by all these other things, and it acts mainly on soft tissues such as bone marrow, liver, and kidneys, killing all the cells. It is present in the tailings. It will continue to be produced by decay of precursors for the next 10,000 years. It dissolves in rain and water. It risks seeping into the water table, contaminating the water supply with potentially lethal effects. And it is 10,000 times more toxic than cyanide. It was the material that was used by the Russians to poison Litvinenko, who got an estimated 1 microgram of polonium-210, and that killed him. So we're playing with real fire. Okay, that's the end of the medicine.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Maxwell. That is terrifying. So that's the first time I've seen Dr. Maxwell speak in person. I've seen that before on the internet, but it hits different when you're standing in the room with him. Wow. Okay, so you heard about radium and some of the daughter products, and speaking of some of those products, and sort of what the uranium will be used for. A lot of us suspect that the uranium will be used for yellow cake, so likely sent to the States, milled into yellow cake fuel, and sent back here for what we presume is nuclear reactors. We know we have so many of those here in Nova Scotia. They are threatening us with a small modular reactor. I encourage you to Google one of those and see how small those are. They set up like a football field. It's just something to keep in mind. While we're talking about, like I said, radium and some of the other daughter products, you might have heard of somewhere called Port Radium, or you might have heard of Uranium City, or Elliott Lake, or Port Hope, or any of these places where uranium or radium activity has occurred. A lot of people like to think that those are methods of the past or things that happened in the past that we're just dealing with the fallout from now. Port Hope is still an operating mill. They're still making, they're still doing the milling processes on uranium there. And as recently as 2019, the residents in Port Hope lost their court battle for remediation of their homes. So their radioactive studs and insulation and properties, those are their responsibilities moving forward. Cameco is not going to help them out. Cameco is a big uranium mining and processing company here in Canada. They're the guys responsible for the operations up in Key Lake and Cigar Lake at the top of Saskatchewan. Speaking of comparisons actually between Nova Scotia and Saskatchewan, the mining sites in Saskatchewan are 600 kilometers away from the nearest private well. Here in Nova Scotia, I think they're about 600 meters from the nearest private well in East Dalhousie. Key Lake and Cigar Lake, a lot of people talk about jobs and bringing quality work. These places provide employment opportunities. They're usually short-lived. The total lifespan of the mine from concept all the way through building to closing doors is like tops, most of these places, 30 years. 10 years of actual operation a lot of the time. Key Lake and Cigar Lake only employ 54% locals up there. Out of the 1,100 people that work at those two facilities, only 54% of them actually come from Saskatchewan. The rest of them are mining experts from out of province or from out of country. These are people, it's not quality jobs for your local economy. It's quality rocks going to the US. So at this point, normally I would have Karen McKendry lend us some of her credibility and depth of knowledge and experience, but instead, we're not. Poor choice of words. This whole uranium thing came as a surprise to everybody, but also came as a surprise to municipal government, as you heard from Casey. This blindsided them as well. Here to provide some perspective on that, and I'm proud to say is my councillor for District 6, and I voted for her, representing District 6, Alison Smith.
Hi everybody. I am a new municipal councillor, new since October. Well, it's been a year. Quite a year. But I'm also a poet, and words matter a lot to me. And so what I'm going to do is take you through a series of letters. And this, I hope, highlights some of what's been going on between the province and municipalities and how that relationship has been working lately. So, first of all, I'll go way back to 2008, and I don't have a copy of this letter. I'd love to have it, but sometime in 2008, the Council of Modal sent a letter to the province in support of making the moratorium on uranium exploration and mining permanent. So that ban was legislated in 2009, and Modal sent that letter because folks, some of you maybe in the room, came to council, shared information, shared concerns, and the council of the day responded. So it's important to know that we've been here before, and the municipalities were a very important part in, that time, in amplifying the voices of communities and residents. And that was part of what led to the moratorium. So skipping way ahead to February 2025, every municipality in the province received a letter from the Minister of Municipal Affairs, John Lohr. And I wish I had these on slides because this would fit on one slide. It's 4 short paragraphs. And basically, the Minister of Municipal Affairs was saying, sending us this message, we got to take the no out of Nova Scotia. Nova Scotia must say yes to resource development in the province, and said, if you are supportive and agree, I am asking for you and your council to signal your support for greater resource development within our province by letter or press release. It was like the most vague request. Like, what would we even put in our press release? So, it's not like municipalities around the province were falling over themselves to put out those press releases. I don't know if there were any letters, I didn't see them, but certainly we as a council said, we need more information. Like, this is a very weird, vague request that's coming right before a spring sitting. So 1 week later, Bill 6 hit the floor. So Bill 6, among other things, removed the ban on uranium exploration and mining, and also on hydraulic fracking in the province. This was pulled the carpet out from under everyone. No one saw this coming. There had been this mandate letter in January that was, kind of signaled that this something like this might happen, but as was said earlier, this was not in any election platform. It just kind of came out of the blue, no consultation with anyone, including the Mi'kmaq. Bill 6 came, and I have to say, I was a little bit distracted at the time as a new councillor. I was in the middle of learning the budget process, which was very intense. And I guess I thought I was going to have time to catch up with this issue. But about a month later, I get a message from a resident who's sitting right here. And he said, heads up, there's an RFP that's just been put out for uranium exploration in our watershed. So just over the border of my district, which ends in Franny Corner, but it's in our watershed and at the top of our watershed, so any damage to the watershed would affect us. So for all the reasons we've been hearing about tonight, I took this to my council, and after some discussion about, was this our jurisdiction? Should we get involved? Do we have enough staff, resources? We decided to get a report from staff on the possible impacts of uranium mining in the LaHave River watershed. So the next letter I want to mention was from Pictou County. So while we were going through this, it's also happening across the province in West Hants and in Pictou. And so residents went to the Pictou County Council and said, you know, we need to slow things down immediately. Like, this is moving way too fast. So the Pictou County Council decided to write a letter to the province asking them to put a pause on the RFP process. And meanwhile, we've got, you know, the meeting in East Dalhousie. We had one in Lake George. Lake Paul. And, you know, everybody's learning all kinds of stuff and momentum is building. So Pictou sends their letter, and then on the night before the RFP window closed, our council met. We had a lot of people in the room, in the public gallery, who are in the room now, who spoke quite compellingly to our council. And we decided to write a letter as well, asking for a pause on the RFP process. Earlier in the day, Annapolis had done the same, and almost at the exact same time, West Hants was also doing it in front of a packed room. Their public gallery was full as well. So the next letter that I want to mention was dated for the very next day, June 11th, and that was the letter that West Hants received from the province. You know, they voted on June 10th. The province's letter went out on June 11th, which makes me think they had it ready. But it's quite an incredible letter, and if anyone wants a link to it, I can pass that along. One of the unbelievable things in the letter is that the province lists investments that the province had made in that county since Tim Houston became premier. And it is so thinly veiled a threat. It's quite incredible. And this letter did not, I heard rumors about these letters kind of floating around, but I did not actually read any quotes from it until the night that our staff report on uranium came back to council. And I was sitting there in my council chair getting ready for the meeting. I opened up my CBC News app just to check in with the news of the day, and they had broken the news about these letters. And I've got to say, you know, as a new municipal councillor, the intent of that letter seemed pretty clear to me. It's meant to intimidate, and it's meant to say, if you want investment for your communities, don't bring us concerns from your communities about resource extraction, which I think is, you know, we've really got to think about the lines that are being crossed here. But, you know, I'm really proud of my council because despite that night, we heard the report from our staff, we discussed it, we heard from residents, and we decided to send one more letter to the province. And in that letter, we said it was our position that the moratorium should be returned, and that there should be public consultation based on, you know, solid analysis of the economic benefits of resource extraction of uranium, as well as the risks. And as I say, you know, I'm really proud of our council because we listened to our residents and we stood firm when, you know, the province was pushing back. And I have to say, we have not received a letter like that. We have not received any any response at all from the province on those 2 letters. But yeah, a part of my message to you in this, little storytelling is your municipal councilors are on the ground. We're in your communities. We're nonpartisan. We're independent, and you can come to us with your concerns. And I think we're a really important frontline part of your communities, and we will speak up. We will speak up.
Thank you, Alison. That's why I said I was so proud to have her as my councillor for District 6. If I understand correctly, Mahone Bay is its own municipality, correct?
Yes.
Okay, so this is important that you guys are here this evening and seeing what we've experienced in the municipalities around you guys. I'll be curious later if anybody has any anecdotal information on what it's been like in your municipality or talking to your councillors, or if that's happened at all. You guys are also at the end of the watershed, it's all of our water, right? The aquifers here in Nova Scotia all know each other very, very well. And while we're speaking about mineral rights and Bill 146 and Section 26 of the bill, of the Mineral Resources Act, it may sound a little conspiratorial that if they find something under your property, they're going to come and get it. Well, it's not conspiracy. It's in the bill, and they've used the teeth of the bill already. I believe it was in Kings County. They went after a lithium deposit that was held by a private corp. Was it Yarmouth?
It was near Yarmouth.
Okay. You'd probably be able to speak to this better than I could. But they have used the teeth of the act. It's not conspiracy, it's real. If they find something under your property, they can come get it. They have the rights to the resources 6 inches under your property, and they'll come exploring. So people have received letters in the municipalities asking for their cooperation, letting companies come explore on their property for minerals. If you say no, basically the act says it'll go to arbitration with the province, and they'll just provide permission for them to enter your property and search for the resources that are there. But definitely with a PhD in geology from Louisiana State University, go Tigers, adjunct professor at Acadia, former managing director at the Canadian Geoscience Council, and an author for the Halifax Examiner, we have geoscientist Dr. Elizabeth Foster.
Thank you. It's interesting. I've been to, 5 or 6 of these community gatherings, and I've spoken at several of them, and several of my fellows speak, and I always learn more. So it really pays off to go to more of these meetings. I keep learning. So I do hope you will learn something from my little presentation. I tried to shorten this as much as possible. I've written in several times, I get published by the Halifax Examiner, if you look it up. Somebody actually, recently, whoever it is, I don't know, but there is a Wikipedia page on uranium in Nova Scotia. I have no idea who wrote it, but it's pretty good. So it is Brad pointed it out to me. If you go to Wikipedia and look up uranium Nova Scotia, there is an immensely long page with a lot of scientific literature quoted. I have no idea who did it. It's not me. I have a blog. Some of the material is on the blog. I need to update it with this latest one. And don't hesitate to, if you want to ask a question, by all means. Can I get the next one? So just a few uranium essentials. We've had some of this already, but it is the heaviest element on Earth. It is very common, a very common element, but it's not evenly distributed in the Earth's crust. Every element, as we all learned in Chemistry 101, consists of a core with protons, which have a positive charge, neutrons, which have no charge, surrounded by electrons, which have a negative charge, And in stable elements, the charge is balanced. Uranium is unstable. It has more neutrons and protons than electrons, and so the charge is not balanced. And in the process of becoming stable, uranium decays, is what we call decay, by ejecting nuclei and electrons. And this is what we call radioactivity. This is the radiation, it's the changing of the properties of that element. And in doing so, it becomes something else, a whole series of things that were mentioned. The half-life of uranium is 4.5 billion years. Let's get to the next step. That means that after 4.5 billion years, half of all the original uranium on Earth has decayed to lead. After another half, 4.5 billion years, half of that, and so on, which means you never run out. It's important to know that Earth is 4.5 billion years old. This just happens to be. So we need a few more billion years before all the uranium is decayed to lead. So in other words, we will always be in the presence of radioactive uranium in the Earth's crust. Can't do anything about it, it's there. For a certain amount of time, as was mentioned, it exists as radon with a radioactive gas. We'll get back to that. Because of the geologic makeup of Nova Scotia, both uranium and radon are abundant and they're well documented public health risks. Yes. So, where does uranium occur? Megan, you have that awesome slide. Use this one with the red for the granite. I'll send it to you. So this is Nova Scotia, and in red is the outcrop of the granite. We all know what granite looks like, but there will be a picture. And our lovely Peggy's Cove, of course, right there is exposed in granite. The granite is about 450 million, not billion, million years old, and it rose up from deep in the crust, and it is the source of the uranium. But uranium is a very mobile element, and so it also moves into the rocks that were once on top of the granite. They're gone, they've eroded off for the most part. And so it's now present in the rocks surrounding the granite, but in a different form. So in the granite, it's present in its original form, and in the rocks surrounding it, the sandstones, it's present in a different form because it has moved there. I'll spare you the details. Yes. So again, same map. In red are the granite bodies, and the targeted areas, the areas targeted by the Nova Scotia government are 1 Millbrook, Vaughan, that's the Vaughan area on the South Mountain, where a very active group is headed by Sarah Trask. She wouldn't want to be called headed, but I call it that. And then East Dalhousie group in the watershed of the Delhave River. And then on the North Shore, the Liverjohn area, the Louisville, also called the Louisville deposit, that one is in sandstone. These two right here on the southern mainland are in granite. So if you go to the Nova Scotia Department of Natural Resources website, you get a geologic map of Nova Scotia. That is, for most people, confusing. If you compare it to the one on the right, just look for the main thing, is that pink blob is right there. That is the granite. That is the source of our problem. It's also what we find very beautiful. And the different uranium occurrences are plotted, and all the other rocks are mapped around it, have different colors. The sandstones, the Halifax Formation, all the leaning sandstones that you see along the coast are in Goldenville Formation in gold and greenish. That's where all our issues with gold mines are. So in the pink granite, you see the different deposit types of uranium. So they know that uranium occurs in different forms in these different rocks. The red diamonds are in the granite. They're called granite vein type. Then there is a blue triangle called a pegmatite. It's basically granite. And then there is the sandstone, which is a roll front. I won't go into the detail, but that's a sandstone occurrence. It occurs in a very different way. And then there are a few others that we're not really concerned about right now because they're not targeted, because they're only targeting the granite and the sandstones near Tatamagouche, where there is also a very active group being opposed to that exploration. Yes. So this is what granite looks like. This is right behind Vaughan. That's Brad Redden, fellow geologist, who actually knows a lot more about granites and uranium than I do, but he's not here tonight. This is actually in one of the former exploration areas. It's fenced off, it's private land, but we were given access, which was really fun. But just to give you an idea, that's my boot right there. That is what granite looks like. You can see instantly that it's not homogeneous. And without knowing anything about geology, you can see that it is coarser grained in the lower right-hand corner of that image, and finer grained somewhere in the middle, and even finer grained toward the top, and there's a little chunk in there. It's not homogeneous. What an exploration program does is try to map the rock outcrop, the occurrence, in as much detail as possible, and find the areas with the highest concentration of whatever mineral you're looking for, in this case, uranium. Because it may look as one pink blob on a geologic map, but it is far from homogeneous. So that's what the companies want to do in terms of exploration. That's what they've been doing in terms of research as well for a long time. And I want to emphasize that the government has said now we can do research after they lifted the ban. And this is nonsense, because research was always possible, and I'll get to that. The Department of Natural Resources geologists have done excellent research over the decades themselves in cooperation with university scientists. What you do is you issue a specific permit for a specific sampling program because of a specific research question. You don't need to lift the ban to do research as nonsense. Never needed. Okay. So, because of the different occurrences in the granite and in the sandstone, the mining methods will be different as well. So in the granite, Millitbrook and East Dalhousie, up from here, the uranium is concentrated along preferential mineral paths in the granite. As you know, and that little photograph was just an illustration of how heterogeneous a granite is. That was actually a sampling area in the 70s. In sedimentary rocks, it's present as a so-called roll-front deposit. I took the picture out because I only have 5 minutes, but it is a very different occurrence, and it requires a very different mining method. So yes. So the mining methods will be different. In a granite, it will likely be open pit mining after you've done the exploration. And the previous speaker had excellent explanation of the risks of open pit mining. The dust settles on everything. You know, there's no question. What the companies will say is, we can do this better now. No, it's not a good idea. Not so close to people. In sedimentary rocks, there will be a process called solution mining, which costs a massive amount of water, and the risk, therefore, is not only groundwater contamination, but also groundwater depletion for surrounding communities. So those are the major risks, yes. Now, Canadian uranium is Saskatchewan uranium. Canada is the second largest producer and exporter of uranium in the world, and all of it currently is mined in the Athabasca Basin, which is a geologic structure in Saskatchewan, northern Saskatchewan. And this is a very oh, that looks weird. That's odd. That came out. Anyway, this is a map of Saskatchewan, but the bottom part fell off. Don't know why. Anyway, here's Nova Scotia at the same scale as Saskatchewan. All points, Saskatchewan has about the same amount of people as Nova Scotia. They all live in the southern part. Almost all of them live in the southern part. All the uranium is 800 kilometers, as was previously mentioned, north. That's Nova Scotia at the same scale. Same scale. You can, yeah. And we have 1 million people. In 2022, Canada produced 15% of the world's uranium. The rest comes from Kazakhstan. Almost all of the rest comes from Kazakhstan. 80% of what we produce from the Athabasca Basin is exported to other countries, to the US, to other countries. If our supply would be threatened, if you don't even want to address whether we need nuclear energy or not, if our supply would be threatened, all what we do is stop selling it. We have enough there. We will never be uranium insecure. We don't need to produce it from a densely populated area. So I like to leave out the question of nuclear energy because it dilutes the discussion. I personally am not a fan, but that's besides the point. We don't need it. There is so much there, we'll never run out. In 2021, nuclear power accounted for 14% of Canada's electricity. It might grow, or it might become less as we get better with renewables. It's not a whole lot, it's not going to grow exponentially, that's for sure, and that reserve is massive. Yes. Now, back to Nova Scotia. This has already been mentioned. We live on uranium, we can't help it, this is what the crust gave us. We have two major risks. One is uranium in well water. We have a lot of people in private wells. 26, this is a report by the Department of Natural Resources. It's the government. These guys are great. They have people on staff who can tell them exactly what, but they don't want to hear this. But I cannot stop saying how excellent these reports are by the government's Department of Natural Resources. 26,445 private wells, this 2020 report, are in high-risk areas for uranium. We've had an excellent expose on the risks of uranium. Oh, this will all be online. I mean, you're welcome to take a picture, but this is all publicly available. As many as 6.5% of private wells in Nova Scotia may exceed, these are conclusions from this report, from this government report, may exceed safe drinking water limits. In Nova Scotia, uranium levels in drinking water are between 0.05 and 0.83 milligrams per liter, but the guideline is 0.02. So there are a lot of these wells that are way over. You can get a test kit. The government will provide it to you for free. Public libraries, you can, the link is right there. You should, if you're on a well, get it tested. Yes. And as of course, one of the decay products of uranium is radon. Radon is a gas. It's heavy. It occurs throughout Nova Scotia. Its occurrence is the radon risk map, also from the Department of Natural Resources. The darkest colors is where the risk is highest. Of course, that's in the areas that are exposed in the granite. The link is immediate. It's a public health risk. It accumulates in poorly ventilated basements. Exposure, we've just heard, increases risk of lung and throat cancer. There was a lot more detail in the previous presentation. You can get a test kit to test your basement if you are in one of these areas. I live in Wolfville. There is a very slim dark line in the Gaspro Valley. It's very dark. There is a lot of cancer in the Gaspro Valley. So you should get your basements tested for the risk of radon seeping in from the. It's nothing you can do about it. It's there. It's completely natural. You have to just mitigate it by airing your house. Yes. Now, why did Houston lift the ban? Of course, he's on a resource roll, but it's not very well informed. The uranium price is high because of the political support for the nuclear sector. President Trump, I have a hard time calling the guy president, ordered to cut regulations and accelerate licenses for nuclear reactors and power plants because of the IT sector, both all the IT guys, the AI, chat GPT, I can't even say that. And Bitcoin, that costs a massive amount of energy, and he's been convinced, he has no brain, but he's been convinced by the IT guys that the economy depends on this, and so they need to have a lot of electricity to be able to expand in that sector, and that means there's a growing demand for uranium to build nuclear power plants in the US. The tariffs on uranium from Canada and Kazakhstan maintain pressure on that supply, so it's a very tense sort of thing. This causes the price to rise, and this is when Houston lifted the ban. So that's all it is. It has nothing to do with our energy need. This is the reason. Yes. So for me, in conclusion, there is no economic case for mining uranium in Nova Scotia. The current investment climate is only based on stock market speculation. The public health risks of uranium and radon are well documented and won't ever go away, ever. And public investment should be directed towards improving understanding and mitigating these risks, and not towards increasing them. So research, yes. Thank you.
Thank you. I have heard Dr. Costas speak before, and it's just as impactful the third time. Again, comparisons to places like Saskatchewan. Nova Scotia is a province where we live and we hunt and we fish and we recreate and we work all in the same few square kilometers. We don't have a wilderness. We don't have a 600-kilometer exclusion zone where the uranium might as well be on the moon. We're in all these places, our woodlots and our cabins. And speaking of woodlots, from her well-connected and extensive family tree to her tree lot in East Dalhousie, we have Community Representative Janice Wilson here to give a local community perspective. Thank you. Like your shirt.
Thank you very much. Thank you for coming out. Thank you for allowing me a few minutes to give my personal take on uranium mining in Nova Scotia and in East Dalhousie. As AJ said, my name is Janice Wilson. My husband and I live in East Dalhousie in Napas County. We have 260 acres of land, all designated for uranium exploration and mining. 170 acres borders on Lower 60 Lake, which feeds directly into the Lave River. And all the 260 acres is located in the watershed area. Some of this land has been in the Wilson family for nearly 100 years. It's been a source of income for my family for years, as it was for generations before us. We try hard to be good stewards of the land and take pride in being responsible harvesters of saw logs, firewood, Christmas trees, and fir boughs. Recently, we cut logs and had them milled for our son to build a house there. We use the land for recreation, for hiking, snowshoeing, cross-country skiing, fishing, and bird watching. The land is mixed forest and home to many species of birds, including some that are found on the species at risk list. If we discover a bird's nest in the area that we're working, we'll stay clear until the young have left the nest. I recall watching a barred owl go in her home in a hollow rock maple tree. So you may be able to understand how devastated we were to learn from the media that the ban on uranium exploration and mining that had been in place since the early 80s had been lifted, and East Dalhousie and all our property was one of the 3 sites in the province. This all done without consultation with landowners, Mi'kmaq, or communities. And certainly No mention of it in Houston's campaign. We are devastated to think this beautiful land is earmarked to become a possible gigantic hole in the ground, contaminating the water and the air. We do understand that maybe mining uranium has changed over the years, but uranium is still uranium. We don't believe any mining company can guarantee there won't be contamination. We're all human, and humans make mistakes. And we, the taxpayers, are left to monitor and clean up the radioactive toxic mess for hundreds of years after the mining companies have extracted what they want, destroyed the land and our homes, and move on. And what happens to our neighbors who live just outside that designated area? Mining companies may force us to sell our property, but our neighbors will be forced to live next door to a toxic wasteland. They would hardly be able to give their homes away. Property would be worth diddly squat. Who wants to live next to an open pit mine? And if any of you haven't seen what an open pit mine looks like, just Google it. It's a massive hole in the ground. Well, I'm not a doctor or a geologist or a scientist, but since the ban was lifted and we have started gathering information, I have had the opportunity to listen to people from these professions. The story is the same. Leave uranium in the ground. There are those who say we are protesting for no reason. It may never happen. And if it does come to pass, mining won't happen for maybe 10 years. Well, I'm not one to wait for the snowstorm to start before I go buy my snow shovel. I did not wait when the fires this summer surrounded us. I didn't wait for the fire to come to my doorstep before I prepared an evacuation bay. Just as I'm getting prepared for what our government has in store for us next. And we just don't know what that is. I'm not sure if I'd consider myself a loud voice, as our premier might suggest, about those who disagree with him, but I am very upset and concerned about this issue. So I guess that would certainly make me part of a special interest group, interested in saving our property, our community, and our environment. And I will do what I can. We have lost complete faith in our premier and our MLAs, who don't appear to listen to our concerns. Surely there must be better ways to build our economy than destroying our land, our water, and our air. And yes, Houston, we have a problem. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
From my perspective, this is an easy fight to get behind. I mean, it was popular when the moratorium was put in place, and it didn't become unpopular over time. It just seemed that they waited until people weren't looking. At the first meeting in East Dalhousie, I heard the next person speak, and it actually motivated me to join the fight. I think it's important to hear from our community representatives, and next we'll have Community Representative Barry Leslie come and say a few words, and then we'll have a quick message after that from Marion, and then we'll do a quick Q&A for those of you who are interested. And we'll try to answer those questions as best we can, but we do want to remind everyone that this is an information session. We don't want it to turn into a forum for debate or degenerate into something like that. If you have more pointed questions or opinions, of course, feel free. It's a free country and it's a free space, but try to save the more militant stuff for myself or someone afterwards. I'd be happy to weather that storm for you. So, Barry, if you want to come up and say a few words? Sure.
I don't know if I'll need the mic, but okay. I just need to open a couple pages. My name's Barry Leslie. Elizabeth talked about that dark brown line in Gasbro Valley. I built my house and raised my kids on that dark brown line, and we were there for 42 years. So I have concerns about that. Huge concerns. Now I'm going to start by telling you about I've heard it said in the communities, I'm a bit random, but it'll all come together. I've heard it said in the communities recently by a number of people, uranium's on the back burner, don't worry about it, right? We're not here. Well, I have two identical twin 8-year-old grandsons. And they come to my house and they look at me and they say, Grampy, can we get at it? I taught them a little bit about boxing. They like to punch me in the stomach. Knock the wind out of me. So I say, yeah, they're getting big. And I steady myself and boom, they nail me. And they laugh and we all laugh. And then I look at Christmas coming. And what's great about Christmas? Well, you got the kids around. The grandchildren, your children, whomever. Nieces, nephews. And I look at these kids, and I look at what could be coming down the road. And I think it's my responsibility to do something here. How can I'm 70 years old, how can I go to my grave if there's uranium dust blowing around? I'm a retired teacher. One time I worked, though, as a plumber pipe fitter in northern Manitoba at a zinc gold mine, and I've seen tailings ponds. I cannot imagine what they'd be like if it was uranium dust. So here are my grandsons. People tell me, you're treating this like it's personal. It is personal. There's no getting away from that. This is very personal. And it's political. Those are two things people in Nova Scotia don't like to accept. But this is personal and it's political, and it is our responsibility to take care of business, to do it. So what I'm here for, Megan tells me, where's Megan? I'm here to tell you what I've been doing along these lines and to urge you to do similar things and get out there. It's scary. Clay and Leo punch me in the stomach. I go to a gym, pneumonics, to try and get rid of some of the stuff. The other day, I'm in the dressing room in the gym, and there's this guy there I've seen before. He's probably 35, something like that. And he, like the rest of us, the most important thing in his life are his kids. He's got to put food on the table. He wants to get them nice Christmas gifts. He wants to buy them new cleats to play soccer. He's an iron worker. He wants development. And he and I get talking about it. And I mentioned the uranium thing. And with a whole pile of expletives, he says, we need that stuff. We need development. I don't care what it is. We need jobs. Well, he's uneducated. Maybe not in a formal sense, but around uranium is. Because as has been mentioned here tonight, for example, the Athabasca Basin, northern Saskatchewan, as Elizabeth mentioned, 15%, most recent numbers I've seen, produces about 20 to 22% of the world's uranium. And it's high quality. At any given time, there are a maximum of 1,400 people working in that, in Saskatchewan on this. What does Houston think is going to happen here? What are we going to have, 15 jobs? To get poor quality and poison the earth? So it's our responsibility to do something about it. I've spoken with every councillor personally, except for the mayor in Kings County. Most of them in person. I've spoken with 2 MLAs, Julie Van Exen, who is conservative in Kings South, and Chris Palmer, who is conservative in Kings West. John Lauren, Kings North. No, it's not. Right? I had a really good discussion with Chris Palmer. And they're all about the economics of it. That's what they've been told. and many of the councilors in Kings County who's trying to get a new pool and a big recreation facility. It's about money. They've been told, you're not getting the money if you don't go along with resource extraction. It is up to us as citizens to help people like you to get on the councilors' sides. Every councilor said to me they oppose the uranium mining, but now it can get a little bit snippy. To a couple of them I said, but bottom line is you'd rather have the pool than your grandchildren's health? Tell me how that works. So my meetings can get a little personal sometimes, but that's what we have to do. If we are going to take responsibility for the world we create for our grandchildren and our children and our futures, I like to think I got 20, 25 years left, right? Then we have to get active. So I'll tell you kind of how it's worked for me. I started by phoning councillors who I knew. I'm a retired teacher. Councillor like Everett McPherson, who's now the deputy mayor in Kings County. Everett was a principal who I knew. And I asked to meet with him. Yeah, no problem. So I went, and some of the discussions were 2 hours long. Phoning Doug Gates, it was 2.5 hours long. Every discussion came around at some point to finances and economics. If you choose to do this, if you choose to speak with people in municipal government, provincial government, you have to go prepared. So I'll take them on financially. If we look at the costs of healthcare as a result of uranium mining, if we look at the costs of reclamation and long-term monitoring as a result of uranium mining, and let's look at Nova Scotia's history in reclamation. The gypsum mines in Hants County are still there. Nobody can use that land. Nothing's been done to it because the company keeps one person hired who moves one truck once a year. So they don't have to do the reclamation. How long did it take to get the tar sands cleaned up? Rio Alamo, down in Yarmouth County, is still a huge scar. You want to see an open pit mine? Go there. Is a huge scar. So there's the cost of reclamation. What does the Nova Scotia government get for royalties on that side? Well, if gold is an example, Nova Scotia's royalties they charge on gold is 1% of net revenue by the company. If you go to Australia, it's between 2.5% and 4% of gross revenue. Nova Scotia has the lowest royalties of any province in the country and of any country in the world. Namibia gets 5%. All right? So if you take them on financially, they can't win. The next thing I talk about is, all right, I understand. People need jobs. People need money to get houses, to feed their kids. How do we do this? How do we do it sustainably? How do we do it without digging toxins out of the ground? Since I was a kid, my grade 6 history book was a little blue thing. One of the things they talked about was Nova Scotia being hewers of wood and drawers of water. Well, that's all primary finances. We need to get to secondary and we need to get to tertiary stages with what we have. What do we have? Relatively, we have a pristine environment. We have a skilled and educated population. We have agricultural resources. We have forestry resources. We have ocean resources. We have wind. We have all sorts of things that we can market if we use our creativity. I'm currently in a group with a fellow named Alan Warner, who's a past professor at Acadia. How many of you know where Cloud Lake Forest area is? What I'm talking about? We are in a group looking at the sustainable use of that, trying to get part of it protected, and also the sustainable use of that I'm also incoming president of Rotary Club in Wolfville, and we have this fundraiser that makes us $1.4 million a year. So I was speaking with a fellow the other night, and our club's looking at joining with Alan Warner, putting maybe $500,000 into it over 5 years, and looking at how we can develop sustainable jobs in this province. Takes creativity, takes cooperation with the MLAs, with the municipal councilors, but with people. So that's my challenge to you. Everybody sits and they nod their heads and they ooh and they ah when they see the big brown stripe going down through the Gasbro Valley. And isn't that horrible? It is horrible. It's disgusting. So I'm going to end with the last paragraph that I find my glasses that I wrote to that I said in my delivery to Kings County Council. Now, I was a little ticked at them, so like I'm not ticked at you yet. So
you have been warned.
Let me just read it, and this I hope will tell you where I'm coming from, and I hope you will go too. So my final paragraph to them was, I have given you some points to consider regarding uranium mining in Nova Scotia. In summation, I would ask you to explore these further and consult more when necessary. And that's what we all need to do. Around in situ mining, around open pit mining, all these different technologies that the mining companies want to make us think are going to make it okay. So consult more when necessary. Please do not play the role of pawns in this game. Become players who think and behave independently, not players who bow down to threats and coercion from those who do not consider our people nor our communities. That is my challenge to you. Think about that. You have to support your elected officials in making wise decisions. Some of them are not making wise decisions. So hopefully get out there and change their minds. If anybody wants any information from me, talk to me later on. I'll do it. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I don't have a lot to add to what Barry just said and others, but I do want to just spend a moment on what do we do next. Sometimes I think this is the most important part of the meeting. So I'm going to put a challenge out to everyone here. Everyone who agrees that we should reinstate the ban. The challenge to those who don't agree with us is to talk to AJ. So we have 3 information tables, lots of information. We have a petition. People spoke about 7,000 signatures. Maybe you are one of the people who didn't sign that petition earlier, but you might have at a farmer's market, a cafe, or at a public meeting. So we do have copies of the petition. We're using the same one so that when the legislature sits again in the spring for 6 days or something, we will ask the opposition parties to table that petition, the new signatures again. We have bumper stickers, we have buttons, we have signs, we have form letters, but one of the things that the Council of Canadians is doing is we have a laptop here, and there's a letter that you can send to the Premier, and when you put in your postal code, it will automatically go to your MLA, and it will also go to the opposition critic for this issue, who's Lisa LaChance, the one who tabled the petitions. So you can either do it, we've had 2 or 3 people try, just by filling it in on the computer that's there, or you can take out your phone and go to Canadians.org/uranium, and there's a QR code, or you can pick up a paper copy. So that's one thing, but I think it'd be very cool if whoever opens the Premier's Mail tomorrow morning finds like 50 letters, new letters. So those are my suggestions. I'm sure everybody else has other suggestions, but we're kind of short of time. Lots of organizations have more information for reading and lots of experts here that you can speak to. So I'm not sure, I'm gonna go back to you.
Sure. What do we have the room till, 9?
Till we leave, but I think.
Yeah, I was getting pretty sleepy. It's pretty late. Okay, yeah, just to speak to Barry and talking about the price tag on all of this, Nova Scotia's already on the hook for $148 million in remediation in contaminated sites. That's without adding 3 more uranium mines to what we have now. As an example, Lake Athabasca, $280 million to clean that one up. So the Premier obviously wants to eat his dessert first on this one, right? I don't see a revenue stream of $280 million coming into the province making that worth it. So now we're going to go to questions. Does anyone here have any questions for anyone on the panel? Well, we've got these lovely, passionate experts here.
Can I add two things? There was a reference made to tailings ponds. There is not one place that's mining uranium that has not had a leak in their tailings pond. Every single one of them has leaked. The other thing is that Vismut actually is in an area very similar to Nova Scotia, small villages scattered about, and many of them basically on top of their mines. So the figures that were derived from Vismut are directly applicable to the situation in Nova Scotia.
Wismut is, the data from Wismut is available online, very accessible online. It is actually digestible. It is something that the layperson can read and get something out of. So it is, if you're curious, it is a good resource. So do we have any questions from anyone in the room? No? Okay. Well, thank you all very much for coming. Ulaliuk for coming this evening, and we hope to see you in the community, and we hope that you go home and take this information and disseminate, speak to friends, and write your MLAs. All right, thank you very much.